There's something just amazing about fall, and it's on its way. I had just recently picked up this pigeonhole nook type shelf unit for about $5, and I was ready to fill it with fall decor. And what arrived just in time? Sonnet September Maker Box. I'm going to use most of these products. There's milk paint, the napkin that usually comes, and this is perfect, recycled decoupage paper, and then the Painted Photographer's amazing rice papers, DIY colors, as well as fusion mineral paint. So I'm going to be using most of these in today's projects. Let's get started. This vintage pail is everything amazing. It's rusty in all different places. So I'm going to be decoupaging this napkin as well as painting with this Renfrew Blue fusion mineral paint. Now, I don't want to just straight paint this fusion paint on. I want to be able to see kind of that dark and rusty peeking through. So I'm going to turn this fusion paint into a wash. Over the summer, I was consigned to do a vanity, and I used fusion paint because I wanted the wood to pull through. I reached out to friends, and Natalie from Sparks of Joy sent me a great sheet that showed me how to kind of get the perfect look using water and fusion paint. So I now feel a lot more comfortable, using that fusion paint and adding as much water as I can. As you see here, I have lots of that paint, so I'm going to go ahead and paint up these cement planters. They're faux planters as well. I have 2 of them. I didn't want to put the decoupage right onto the tin. I wanted kind of a fabric feel to it between it. So I went ahead and cut out a square of a canvas, and then I'm going to take off, because it's a napkin, that bottom ply. It's as simple as just finding the corner and peeling off that extra layer. Now, normally when I decoupage napkins or rice paper or anything, I spritz it with water to have more control, but I'm trying something a little bit different. I flipped it over and I'm using the Fusion Decoupage Medium in order to get it on there a little bit easier. I put it pretty thick, flipped it over, and then laid it down. I'm going to go back over it because I want to make sure this is really secure to the canvas. So a quick introduction, I'm Kathy. I'm with Waste.Not.Upcycled. I'm a full-time teacher and a part-time reseller and upcycler. When I was all finished, I set it out to dry and it turned out perfect. So I am going to cut around the edges of it and pull it so it frays. I choose which side I'm okay covering up, and then I'm hot gluing this on today. Can you tell I'm working day and night in my shed on these projects? So I have about 8 different projects that I'm going to be completing with you today. Came back to complete this project in the morning and remembered I had a huge stash of old dried out flowers that I had gotten from an estate sale that were like next to nothing. So I bundled these together with a cloth. I'll be selling these separately in my booth, but they definitely will fit inside this tin. After looking over this finished project, I thought the orange was a little bit too bright for me. I wanted this to feel a little bit more aged, and it popped out just a little bit too much. So I was either going to use furniture wax, the aging furniture wax, or I was going to use glaze. I thought the glaze would have just a little bit too much shine on it, so I went ahead and used the furniture wax. I used a cloth and covered the whole thing up. Let it sit for quite a while. After it sat for a while, I went back in and wiped it down with a cloth. I was really happy with how it turned out. Definitely stay tuned to the end to see how everything pulled together. For this super quick project, I'm going to be using that mustard fusion paint, and once again, I'm adding water to create a wash. I'm going to be using this on metal, and I'm using it on this vintage flower sifter. I really want that metal to pull through, and I really was hoping that the paint would really stick to those edges. Handle, I'm going to go ahead and just use the actual straight paint so it's nice and dark. Fall is all about colors, so what an easy way to elevate your metal, just simple metal items to put into vignettes around your house, and it just pulls in fall. Told you that was fast, so I'm going to set this aside to dry. Let's go back to those concrete planters, and I'm going to be fussy cutting these beautiful blue pumpkins that Connie created, and I'm going to be decoupaging these onto the cement. Rice paper is a little bit thicker. I am going to spritz this with water, and then I'm actually going to flip it over, and I'm going to go ahead and just apply the decoupage medium on the back of it. I'm using Fusion. I've used Mod Podge. There's so many different things you can use. Anything would work. And then I'm going to simply put it onto the cement planter. Follow these same exact steps for the second one. So now I have a matching set. And talk about an easy project. All I did was I diluted the paint and painted it, set it aside, chose a fun fall picture, and decoupaged it on. And now these are great to add to a vignette. I am obsessed with trays and grabbed this one for $1.50. Now, I looked it up. It is a vintage tray, and had it not been completely beaten up, I mean, this tray could have been worth like $60 to $80. It was a hospitality tray, but it was badly abused. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a new life. I'm using this amazing fall photo that came in the maker box. It's exclusive from Recycled. But I'm deciding I want those etchings and the outside to still show. So I decided to just trace around the inside of that tray. Although I love the dark and moody look, I did want the middle to pop out a little bit more. So I'm just applying white paint, and I think I'm using like regular gallon paint for a house wall, just so that it can pop out. I'm going to wipe around those edges, and then I'll let it dry before I go ahead and apply it. So I'm going to be using that decoupage transfer gel again, and then this I'm going to spritz. In the past, I've spritzed the whole thing, but I'm going to do this one section by section. From experience, it's easier for me. So I'm just going to spritz a small section, set it on the side, and then I will do kind of a starter strip of that decoupage gel where I'm going to set it down. Continued to lay it section by section. Once it was dry, I needed to go ahead and get that overlapping part off. I tried everything. I tried using a paintbrush, and I thought if I got it wet, I could peel it off. I tried a like kind of an X-Acto type knife. That I didn't want to scratch the wood, so I stopped with that. I later tried using scissors. Using a combination of all of those, I eventually got the edge around it off, and it was a hot mess, so I had to create a plan to make it look better. After I got all those edges off, I actually sanded the wood in different spots, and then I'm taking out Fusion chocolate paint, and I'm using that same method where I'm watering it down. I want the wood to show through. So I test out the color, but it is not as see-through as I want. So I'll go over it with the cloth and then add more water to dilute it. When the colors separate in this chocolate, it looks like it's almost a purple hue, but that's kind of deceiving. It's not going to stay that color. It becomes a nice dark color. So I will go ahead, make sure I go around all those edges. And I want this to look kind of old and blended together, like it's a painting that just blends. So I'm going to make sure I get all of those edges. Where that white is peeking through, I'm going to take the chocolate color without having it diluted and blend over it, and then continue to work and blend it through. I'm going to spot check all around those edges, and once I feel like those edges are done, I'm going to take that larger brush and then I'm going to work around the inside of it so it blends to the picture. Now, remember, this is a decoupage, so it's a paper. So when I am finished with this whole project, I go back and I use the Fusion Tough Matte. This project was a little bit more work, but I think it'll look great on top of the shelving unit. These next 3 projects, I'm actually going to be using the milk paint that came in Sonnet's box. These cool salt and pepper shakers are made out of wood with metal handles, so I'm using Rethunk Junk to go ahead and get them ready to paint. This curry milk paint is perfect for fall. So when it comes to milk paint, what you need to do is mix the powder with warm water, equal parts. So I'm going to go ahead and just use a little bit and then mix it together. After mixing it, I feel like it needs a little bit more powder, which is fine. You can always add a little bit more. It's not going to ruin anything if it's not perfectly equal. Along with the salt and pepper shaker, I was going to milk paint some other things. I had this topiary, but it was pretty wimpy, so I needed to glue it to a base. I used Type Bond, and then I went ahead and glued it on, let it sit for a while. I was going to paint that as well. Once that milk paint sits for about 10 minutes, then it's time to paint everything. Now, milk paint, usually that first coat just doesn't look right. So I tend to do a good maybe 2 to 3 coats. Just that little bit of milk paint, there was enough to do the salt and pepper shakers. I did this topiary a couple times, and then I still had leftover paint, so I found a metal basket that I also painted. Milk paint is known for its unpredictability, so I can't wait to see how all 3 of these different projects are going to turn out. When they're dry, I sand them with a very fine sandpaper, and this one is chipping already in different spots. The next time you're out, be sure to look for wooden salt and pepper shakers. Adding some milk paint to it and sanding them down is a quick and easy way, and you can choose all different colors depending on the holiday. The topiary is chipping nicely too, and I love how the white is pulling through. This is the third piece I just grabbed because I had extra milk paint, and now the metal is pulling through on this one. I love how all of these projects turned out. I'm wiping them down with a wet cloth, and then the salt and pepper shaker and the topiary are done. They're good to go. I just need to seal them, but I'm gonna work more on this basket. When out thrifting, I am always grabbing faux plants, and this was a perfect one for fall. I cut all the pieces off the bunch, and then I'm going to go ahead and put them into the plant foam. After I feel like it's completely full, which is pretty much when I used all of it, I'm good to go. I have little bunches. I'm just going to add them into an iron bird dish that I thought would be cute. This is our grand finale and a super easy project. I found this wooden pumpkin at Goodwill for 99 cents, and with a little decoupage and paint, it's going to look fun. So I'm using Grayslake's plaid decoupage, and since it's light, I do not need to paint this. I think it's light enough that it'll pop it through and it'll look great. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure it out. I'm going to spritz my paper with water so that it prevents it from wrinkling. And then since this is a smaller project, I'm just going to go ahead and put the medium all over the pumpkin. And then I'm not working section by section for this. I'm just going to lay it right on the top and hope for the best. Looks good. That was super easy. I did that same method on the other side and then let it sit out to dry. Because of the edges, this one's going to be way easier to get the extra decoupage off. So I have my finger sander and I have a fine grit. And as you'll notice, I'm going downward, a downward motion all along the edges. This is a super easy way to take extra paper off. If you don't have a finger sander and you want one, I'll drop it down in the link below. You can also use a nail file and it will do the same exact thing. Move the extra decoupage from both sides, and now it's time to add detail to that edge. So I'm going to be using like a green paint from an old maker's box, DIY paint, and I'm going to do one section at a time. I'm painting this kind of fast and I'm not being careful with it. If I get a little bit on the edges, that's good. And the reason I'm doing this is I want a tiny bit to get on the edges. I want people to know that this is actually handcrafted and that it's not something that was pre-made at the store. So I'm going to take my cloth and blend in that paint so it has kind of an extra look to it. That's it for this piece, a wooden cutout, some decoupage, and a little bit of paint around the edges. I will seal this with a satin spray, and that is it. Back to those cubbies, so I'm gonna go ahead and dust this whole thing down, and that's all I'm doing. I'm leaving it as is. I'll let it sit in my booth for a while. If it doesn't sell, I can always pull it back and paint it. Fun part was putting all of the creations inside the cubby. So here's the big reveal. I've added some additional items as well. So I created 8 total projects with Sonnet's Maker Box and have a ton of leftover product. If you are not yet receiving Sonnet's Maker Box, I highly recommend it. And I'm going to put a link down below. Also, there's a playlist. There are a bunch of other wonderful creators who take Sonnet's Maker Box and create their creations and share them as well. be sure to check out the playlist and see all of the things that they created. So everything you see here is already priced, and I drove it over and set it up exactly the same at my Grayslake, Illinois booth at Great Lakes Antique Boutique. If you're in the area, definitely check it out. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch me create. Remember that anything can be something, so get creative and waste not. I would appreciate any of your comments down below. What's your favorite project? And if you're not yet a subscriber, I hope you subscribe so you can continue to follow my creative journey.